Welcome back. We're here to talk about Saturday's Premier League match between Crystal Palace and Newcastle. Pascal, will start with the visitors became the latest team to fall at the hands of Leicester last time out.
Yeah, they did. I know Leicester, they're doing brilliantly well. They went top of the table with that win, but even then McLaren said it was the worst performance of the season. You have to say, you look at the defending for all three goals, just so poor. They give away the ball for the first one, and then Vardy, top scorer, he's chasing that record. Everyone knows how much he wants a goal, and I think it was Mbemba just allowed him so easily to cut inside, and then you have to give him credit. It's a great finish. You might question the keeper for being beat at the near post, but I think it was just a really good hit, and can't get beaten there. And then in the second half, the two goals they conceded, Ulloa and Okazaki. I mean, the second one especially, it was comical, the defending for Ulloa's goal. I mean, Mahrez had the ball for a good 5 seconds there on I think it was the right wing, and he was eyeing up across, and there's all the Newcastle players in the box, and they couldn't somehow see that Ulloa, a striker, has just been left completely unmarked at the back post. It was almost hilariously bad defending. And then the third one, Okazaki, is scramble on the line, or Okazaki, it almost hits him in the face, goes onto the turf, and no Newcastle player wanted to throw themselves in the way, try and get anything on the ball to clear it away, and he just able to tap it in. Just terrible defending. Couldn't score. I mean, Leicester, we know the top of the league, they've been scoring a lot of goals, but most teams are able to score against them. Newcastle couldn't even do that at home, so all in all, terrible performance. Like I said, McLaren said it was the worst performance of the season. And yeah, real dark day for the club.
Yeah, and it leaves them just 1 point above the relegation zone now, so they're still very much in trouble. And you mentioned their defence there. Only 2 teams conceded more all season. 25 goals they've conceded in 13 games, which is a pretty poor record. And as you say, some of the defending against Leicester, I actually thought that Okazaki one was the worst of the lot. Just the fact that they just stood there watching it for just happen a yard away from their goal. It was awful defending, but as you mentioned, they couldn't score against Leicester, and that's probably been their biggest problem. They've had a lot of problems this season. Probably the biggest is scoring. Only 4 teams have scored fewer in the whole league than Newcastle's 13, which is 1 a game, but 6 of those came in 1 game. So the fact that they've scored 7 goals in their other 12 games this season is a poor record. It needs to improve, really. They've only scored once since that 6-2 victory over Norwich, which goes to show how much they're struggling in front of goal at the moment. People thought that performance might be a bit of a turning point. McLaren, before that performance, was saying a big game's just around the corner, and they did look good in that Norwich game. Wijnaldum obviously getting the 4 goals, but since then they just haven't been able to back it up at all. Nowhere near as to the level that they were in that game, and it's just been so disappointing from them in front of goal. They need to improve in that area, especially. They need to improve all over the pitch, but up front in the final third, McLaren said he might drop Mitrovic because he's been misfiring. There was controversy during the international break with him apparently having a bust up with Serbian teammates as well. So, on and off the field, he courts a bit of controversy. He's a bit of a fiery character, and he's not really doing the business in terms of goals. So, whether he gives Papi Cisse a chance, he had a good record off the bench last season, but never really happened when he was starting. So it's hard to see where the goals are going to come from, really, because the other options to the team he's been playing at the moment aren't great either.
No, they're not. They've only scored once since that 6-2 win over Norwich, and that was the really lucky goal against Bournemouth. Perez's one, which the keeper should have really saved, dribbled over the line. That win against Bournemouth, though, was their first away in the Premier League since January, that 13 games. So, away from home, they simply haven't been good. They just both attack, defence, home, away. However you look at it, they just look like a relegation candidate this season, and only won 2 of their last 19 away from home. If you go back over a year, so they've struggled for a long time now. Away from home, and even then, we saw last week at home they can just play so badly at St James's Park. So just everything points, to a bad season this year. The away record, only Villa, who are obviously bottom of the table and being, cut a bit adrift at the moment, only they have a worse away record this season with 4 points. Newcastle scored only 2 away goals. That's 5 fewer than the next lowest in the Premier League. So away from home, they're not scoring. They're not keeping teams out. Just everything at the moment. Something really needs to change for Newcastle. I think they need a good run of form. Maybe a couple of wins, a draw. They need an unbeaten stretch. Some new players to come in January, because at the moment, you have to say that they're probably one of the 4 or 5 teams who you think would be there at the end of the season in the relegation battle.
Yeah, but they are coming up against the Palace team who have been very inconsistent of late. They lost to Sunderland on Monday, Newcastle's North East rivals, obviously, and they're down there with Newcastle at the bottom of the table. So that might give Newcastle a bit of hope. For Palace, which hasn't really been good enough since a promising start to the season. They won 5 of their first 8 games of the season, but only won 1 of their last 5 now. So consistency has to improve. They have put in some impressive performances, but the win against Liverpool was a big one, and that followed a draw against United. So that's 4 points against 2 teams expect to be challenging for top 4 Champions League football next season. But then they're going forward to that home defeat against Sunderland, so they need to back up those good results with results against teams they should be beating. We've mentioned before about how they're perhaps better suited to playing the bigger teams with the way they play on the counter-attack, the players they've got, but they need to find a way to beat the teams that they should be beating. Against Sunderland, you can look at a defensive error as the ultimate reason they lost the game. Obviously, Scott Dan, a bit of a miscommunication with his goalkeeper. He seemed to be more intent on blocking off Defoe, and then Defoe just got round him and finished it off like he's made a career out of doing. So it was poor defending, but they didn't really do enough to win that match. It should have been a match they went into thinking that they would come away with all 3 points, considering the form Sunderland won. So a really disappointing result. I think this season now they've won 6 and lost 6, which goes to show a bit of their inconsistency. And Pardew, he needs to sort that out if they are to push up towards the top 6, 7, 8 place in the table.
Absolutely, yeah. And we talked last week about the upcoming games, Sunderland and Newcastle both at home, and we thought it's a real chance for Palace here, 6 points out of 6, especially after, like you said, those good results against Liverpool and United. But after now losing to Sunderland on Monday night, it could be quite nervy there on Saturday now against Newcastle, because we've talked in the past, it's been about a good year now. Palace just haven't been as good at home as away from home. They've only won 1 of their last 5 Premier League games, losing 3 of those. They've won none of the last 3 and not scored in the last 2 home games either, with that 0-0 draw against United and the defeat to Sunderland on Monday. So at home, simply not good enough. They've had some amazing results on the road this season. Credit where credit's due there, especially under Pardew. But they have to, if they really want to. I mean, they're sitting 10th at the moment, right on the periphery of dropping back into the bottom half. If they want to become, a solid top half team, they've got to improve at home. Defensively, you would credit them. They've only 4 teams have conceded fewer this season in the Premier League. But like I said, they're not doing enough really to warrant being a top half team. They're the lowest scorers in the top half. Only scored 14 in 13 games, and maybe that's down to the fact they haven't really found a number 1 striker this year. Connor Wickham was signed. He hasn't really done too much. Dwight Gale's had his injury problems, and a lot of games this season they played. All of their wingers and sort of playmakers not really gone with a striker. So he hasn't really found that formula there. Whether in January he'll go for another striker or if he'll just maybe persist with what he's got, we'll have to wait and see.
And which way do you see this one going this weekend?
I'm going to go Palace here. I think Newcastle last week just really, really bad, atrocious in fact in that defeat to Leicester. So I think Palace here, they'll want to bounce back after their defeat to Sunderland. I'm going to back them to win 3-1.
Yeah, I thought Palace's home form, as you mentioned, is poor, but Newcastle's away form's even worse. So I think I'm going to agree with a Palace victory. I don't see it being too many goals. I don't see it being quite that convincing, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 Crystal Palace victory. So both going for Crystal Palace wins here. Thanks for joining us.